Hi, great to see you. I'm Peter Neufeld and part of the HR team here at Maple Leaf, and welcome to the Healthy Mind Speaker Series. I think you're quite familiar probably if you've tuned in before about our approach where we hear from a great speaker and then we open it up to some Q&A. And today we're going to do things a little bit different, and I'm really looking forward to it. We've been talking about so many different aspects about how to have a healthy mind and how to cope during COVID, from isolation to parenting to dealing with elderly parents and dealing with anxiety, nutrition. And one of the common things that's come out of many of these sessions has been the need and the focus for exercise. And for a lot of us, that can be a little bit intimidating. And even the routines that we've had in the past may have been broken. So even if we were strong in this area before, they might not be so good anymore. And for some people, this will be something brand new. But definitely a resounding theme we've heard is how critical it is to our overall health. And today I'm super excited that we have a guest, Paul Landini. Welcome, Paul. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Peter. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Paul, I feel in a way like I know him because I've been reading his articles in the Globe and Mail for many years. And he has a fitness section and I always enjoy it. And I think what really stands out is he's, even in his articles, it's just very approachable and very practical. And so, as I say, I think it's fantastic that you can join us today, Paul. And today, what we're going to be doing, folks, I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up. Normally, we hear from presenters, so we hear from Paul, and then we switch straight to Q&A. Today, we're going to actually do a little bit of interaction. So we're going to hear from Paul, then he's going to lead us through a little bit of exercise. Nothing too strenuous, so I'm giving you a heads up, and then we'll move to our Q&A. So with that, Paul, before we jump into your presentation, I'm curious, how has COVID impacted you? And with the gym closures and restrictions, I'm sure it's been quite something to be able to manage.
Yeah, well, thankfully we've had, up until recently, the weather's been pretty decent outside. So, spring and summer wasn't much of a challenge. There's lots of parks, lots of green space throughout the city. We've been taking advantage of that. But now as the weather's been turning, definitely getting better acquainted with Zoom, trying to make the best of Zoom sessions in my living room. As you can see here, it's not too huge, but we make do. And then supporting my clients however else I can. I mean, if that means sometimes I just go for a walk with them. I don't charge them for the walk, but we will, meet up, go for a walk around the block. Phone calls, check in, put together a PDF workout that they can follow for the week. I have an online app that delivers workouts as well, if some people are more prefer that. But basically, it's just about supporting your clients or supporting my clients however I can, whether that's with actual workouts, but sometimes they don't even need that. Sometimes they just need, a bit of a break from the day.
No, that's awesome. So over to you. I look forward to hearing what you have to teach us.
Great, thanks a lot. So as Peter mentioned, my name is Paul and I am a personal trainer. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about what a trainer really does. I've noticed over the years there's a varying degree of ideas. Some people see trainers as drill sergeants. We're the guys that bark orders at you and make you do all those exercises that you hate. On the flip side of that, some people see us as cheerleaders. We're there to prop you up and pat you on the back and, make that 1 hour, 45 minutes, however long we're together, go by in an easy breezy sort of way. What's more common, I find, is that we're actually kind of like therapists, where in between sets of push-ups, we go over all of your problems. And, all of these things, they're true. But really, I think my real most valuable role as a trainer is that of a stress manager. And what I mean by that is that it's my role to ensure that I don't add more stress to my clients' lives by putting them through poorly planned workouts that really don't do a lot to push them towards their goals or even meet their current fitness abilities. Now, one thing I want you to remember, the overlying message of this whole presentation, if you could take only one thing away, is that exercise is a form of stress. So now, we go to the next slide. Stress is an unavoidable part of life. We got work stress, we got life stress, we have financial stress, we have COVID stress. But the good thing, as Dr. Hans Selye, the so-called father of stress research, has pointed out, is that it's not necessarily stress that kills us, it's our reaction to stress. Dr. Selye's research is very groundbreaking. He was one of the first people to really illustrate or show people that we can control our reactions to stress. Not only that, we could actually harness the stress response and we could use it to our advantage. Now, I don't want to spend too much time going over the science. We're not going to get too deep into the weeds here, but it's important that we understand a few key concepts about stress and the stress response. So now, if we go to the next slide, what we see here is classic representation of the fight or flight syndrome. Now, fight or flight is what happens whenever we encounter a stressful situation. It can be real, it can be imagined. But our body switches over into this mode where we prime ourselves for performance, where we can do these intense physical feats, be it fending off a saber-toothed tiger or performing a set of heavy squats in the gym. Now, this is a very important function, served us well throughout all of history, but it's only really valuable in small doses. And now if we go to the next slide, I'm going to further illustrate this point by asking you to just take a second and imagine that you are a car. Now, cars, they can go fast, they can go slow, we can slam on the gas, we can get that speed up way past 100, but then what happens? We hang out there too long with our foot on the gas, we're going to burn a ton of fuel needlessly. Not only that, over time, we run the risk of ruining the engine. Now, this is essentially what happens when we are living in that fight or flight mode all day long, which, unfortunately, a lot of us are. So, now, the next slide. You might be asking, what does all of this have to do with fitness? Well, as I mentioned earlier, exercise is a form of stress. And in order to maximize the benefits of exercise and minimize the impact of the stress hormones that flood our system when we're in that state, I want you to forget every motivational slogan you might have ever heard as it pertains to fitness. Go hard, go home, no pain, no gain, no days off. It's all BS, it's all junk. There's only one slogan that you really need to keep in mind, and that is what we presented here. Keep calm and go to the gym. A very common misconception is that the gym is something where we go to the gym and we have to perform these fantastic feats. This is that ego-driven sort of idea that when you're in the gym, you don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to look silly. You don't want to look weak or pathetic or any of those things. And it's all silly. It's all nonsense. When we're in the gym, we're practicing skills. We're supposed to be having fun. This might be a foreign concept. It might seem a little strange, as often fitness isn't really portrayed this way. It's something that we have to do. It's a struggle. It's an obligation. If we could switch that mentality in our head and actually make exercise something that we're excited to do, it changes everything entirely. Now, one concept that's very important to understand, I mentioned it already, it's the idea that the gym is where we develop skills, not perform skills, or demonstrate skills, rather. If you are a competitive powerlifter, and I was working with you in the gym, we're still working with sub-maximal weights. We're not going to be really pushing it super hard all the time. Yeah, every now and then we're going to have a really aggressive day, pushing yourself to almost your maximum limits, but not over. We always have to keep things right around what you can manage. The day of the meet, that's when we go all out. That's when we put it all on the table. I'm going to hazard a guess here that not a lot of you are competitive powerlifters. So in that case, you really need to understand that idea of ego-driven performance in the gym, just put it on the back burner, get it out of your mind entirely. And one of the easiest ways to accomplish that is with something that we call timed sets. Now, the traditional way a workout is usually structured, you might be familiar with this concept of sets and reps. Each time we do a push-up, that's a rep. 10 reps spread across 3 sets, we have 30 reps. That can sometimes be helpful, but I find if we set a clock, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, up to a minute, and then just fill that time with movement, with quality movement. It's a lot more beneficial for all of us. You can maintain your focus. You're not thinking about when the hell is this going to be over. You just have to make it look pretty, make it look easy. And when you can't make it look pretty, when you can't make it look easy anymore, the set's done. We move on to the next exercise. So now, all of this stuff is very important, but arguably what's even more important is what we do before the workout and after the workout. This is where we can really help mitigate all the negative impacts of stress and really amplify the positive impacts of exercise. So now to the next slide. The warm-up is basically, people show up at the gym or a training session. Rarely are we ever primed to perform. We are oftentimes coming right from work. Maybe there's traffic on the way to the gym. We're thinking about, deadlines, dinner, all these things. We're rarely thinking about the task at hand. This is when we show up at the gym, our heart rate's up a little bit, we're a little flustered. This is where we have to chill out. We have to reset. We need to focus on what's happening in front of us here, not what we just left at the office. So I like to use the warm-up as a time to just reset, focus, and then gradually increase the challenge so that by the time, say 5-10 minutes later, after the warm-up's already kind of set into groove, we're primed, we're amped, and we're ready to go. So yoga is a great option. Some yoga exercises. We have here the cat-camel, or cat-cow sometimes called. It's a classic exercise just designed to get the spine moving up and down, get some fluid going through the synovial channels in the spine. Glute bridges, another excellent exercise. We start off on our back, we lift our butt up, hips up in the air, squeeze our glutes tight at the top, settle back down at the bottom. One of my favorite exercises to incorporate into our warm-up, this is what I like to finish with, the Turkish get-up. It's a bit of a complicated exercise. It's a little too complicated to go over right now and demonstrate and give you the details. But if you go on Google and check it out, you'll find tons of tutorials that showcase why this exercise is so important. It requires a ton of focus, and you really can't be thinking about anything else other than the actual exercise itself. We essentially get you flat on your back and have you get yourself to a standing position, and then you reverse all of that back down to the ground while holding a heavy weight in your hand. So if you're thinking about anything else other than the actual exercise, you're probably going to do it wrong. So now on to the next slide. This is probably the #1 most common mistake people make, is the cool down. 99% of people, when they finish their workouts, what do? Towel down the bench they're on, if that, hit the shower, change, go home. That's it. But remember, what I did say earlier, what was that idea earlier about stress, exercise, and stress? They're the same. Exercise is a form of stress. And if we just went through a challenging workout, a fun challenging workout, if we just finished one, you're probably still pretty amped up. You're still in that fight or flight state. Your heart's pounding, your adrenaline's pumping through your veins. If we don't spend at least 5 minutes just chilling and relaxing, well, you're liable to get into some sort of road rage incident on the way home. We want you to be cool and calm and walk out of the gym feeling great. And the easiest way to do that, breathing. Now, it might sound a little silly to give directions on how to breathe, but it's been my experience that people don't really know how to breathe properly all that well. Think of what the stress response looks like. It's that shallow, hyperventilating breaths, all up here in the chest. The lungs barely get a chance to inflate. We're not really getting all the oxygen we need. That's not what we think of when we think of a calm, relaxed state. The easiest way to get you into that rest and recovery state, which is the opposite of fight or flight, deep belly breathing. As we can see here on the slide, we have an example of that. You can place one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest, and just take a deep inhalation. Pull that air down into your hips. Allow your ribs to expand around as wide as they possibly can. Hold on to that breath for just a second and let it all out. 30 seconds up to a minute, you'll notice almost an immediate impact. You can do it standing, you can do it sitting, you can do it lying down on your back. It's all good. Now to amplify, to really make it a lot more effective, we incorporate the deep belly breathing with some stretches. Now some people, they talk about that stretching not being too important, you can't really stretch a muscle, it's useless. A lot of trainers, they kind of, poo-poo stretching, but I think it's fantastic. It's a time for you to check in with your body, with your brain, and just chill out. And the piriformis stretch, is illustrated here, is my go-to #1 stretch that I finish all my workouts with. The piriformis is a small muscle located right here around the back, and it connects from your tailbone into around the top of your thigh. The thing about the piriformis is it's constantly under tension, and that tension lands right in the low back. It's been my experience that with people who complain about back pain, and very often, most cases, that back pain is actually a tight piriformis. And we get them into the stretch and instantly their eyes light up and they feel that tension in their back and in their hips that they had no idea existed. 30 seconds of a piriformis stretch in a deep breathing state, and you're in a blissful state, ready to go. Your next workout is going to be even better. You're going to be in that rest and recovery state. Your body's primed to recover. You're not going to be in an anxious, agitated state, which is the exact opposite. As we don't want to be there, that's going to prevent you from getting better and looking forward to your next workout. So what I'm going to do right now is just demonstrate quickly for you 2 exercises that I use, one in the warm-up, one in the cool-down. So we'll be going over the piriformis stretch, but first, this is an exercise called a yoga push-up. So now, if you can't do push-ups, don't worry. There's a variation that's very simple, but essentially the yoga push-up is just a downward dog and a push-up combined. And it's one of the best warm-up exercises you could do. It hits the hamstrings, it hits the spine, it hits the chest, the shoulders, the upper back, and it looks a little bit like this. So I'm just gonna point my camera down here a little bit. So all you need to do really is just start off on your hands and knees, walk a foot back, and make sure we're not pushing your butt up in the air. You want to tuck your hips under, squeeze your glutes tight, point those elbows backwards towards your feet, and then slowly lower yourself down to the floor. Exhale on the way up, and then pop your hips in the air. I don't know if you can see this too well. My butt might not be showing, but I'll try to angle this just a little bit. Get that straight line right there from your heels to your hips, and then from your hips down your back. 5 to 7 reps is all you really need. Inhale and lower, exhale up, pop up into the down dog, and just hang out here. Breathe. Let your body know that this is okay. This is not a stressful situation. Again, 1 more rep. Exhale, up, and then on to the next exercise. So on upper body days, I always do those downward dog push-ups. Some lower body days, maybe I'll do them as well. Now, if you can't do a full push-up, use your knees. As you lower yourself down into the push-up, from up here, you drop. You could just drop your knees down to the ground, fire off a push-up from your knees, and then push your hips back up. You're still getting the same effect. You're still hitting the spine, the hamstrings, and the chest. And it's going to be, obviously, less intimidating for you. Now, the cool down. The piriformis stretch is a little complicated, but I'll go through it for you here step by step. First, we just start off flat on the back. Can you see me okay up there? All right. So from here, we take one leg and we cross it over our thigh. So your shin is resting right on the thigh, just below the knee. And then from here, you just pull your leg up, loop one hand through the little hole there in between the legs. The other arm comes up, secures under the ankle, hand over hand. Then you just relax on the ground. You simply pull your leg into your chest, and you'll feel a very instant stretch all through the side of your glutes, your butt, down to your knee, likely even around back into the low back area. And we're going to take some deep belly breaths. And with each breath, sink a little deeper into the stretch. Yeah, no more than 45 seconds. Just ease into it. And obviously you want to do both legs. Again, one hand under the ankle, grabs the shin. The other hand loops through the hole between the legs. Interlock your fingers, and then relax back on the ground. Now, for some of you, that might be a challenge, and that's fine. All you need to do, prop your head up under a pillow, and that'll take care of some of the mobility issues. But again, the big takeaway here is that exercise is a form of stress, and that it's our job to make sure that we make it lighthearted, make it more fun. The last thing you want to do is think of exercise as another burden in your day. So smile, have a good time, and you'll live to fight another day.
That's awesome, Paul. Well, Paul, when you're looking at this, you're talking about a gym, and you're obviously doing exercises here at home, and said you've been doing it this way for a while. Any advice for how people can maximize their space? And a lot of us, we have different amount of room. Some it's a very small condo. Some might have a bit more room. Any thoughts on how you can do it well in a smaller space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge that I deal with as well. It's now when COVID first hit back in March, I transitioned pretty much right away into just doing body weight mobility exercises for about 2 months. And now it was, for the winter leading up, all through say probably December, January, February, right up till March, I was doing the exact opposite of everything I just told you today in this presentation. I was doing a pretty aggressive weight barbell-based program. And I ended up, I gained some muscle mass and my squat numbers looked great, but I felt like hell. My hips hurt, my upper back was constantly, right here especially, my shoulder was just always swollen and sore. And then I spent about, all of March, all of April, just, sitting in front of my TV watching, Michael Jordan and Last Dance on Netflix and doing these stretches. Basically, body weight exercises are great. You could do them in any room. You don't need to have a lot of space to do some body weight squats or to do push-ups or to do some planks or hollow body holds. Now, some of these terms might seem foreign. You might not know what a hollow body hold is, but I encourage everybody. There's a great website called GMB. So again, gmb.io. They're an excellent organization, and it's all just body weight exercises that you can do at home with very minimal equipment. I mean, some of the programs, the one that I was doing through March and April, there was no equipment at all. You're just doing variations on animal sort of flow poses, like a frogger, where you're down in a deep squat. You put your hands on the ground and you kind of pull your hips forward and you push your hips backwards. Or things like practicing handstands, which, yes, that's not necessarily a beginning exercise, but there's ways of doing it where you can use your couch, use the walls in your apartment, where you can, any sort of props that you can use to your advantage to help make the exercise a little easier, a little more manageable. That's what it's all about. I mean, I have an ottoman here in front of me that I use for, putting my feet up to do push-ups. My wife uses it for doing push-ups with her hands on it. An inclined surface will make push-ups easier. So, there's lots of things you could do in your home to help maximize your fitness without using the gym. And again, in warmer weather, playgrounds. Playgrounds are amazing. There's, monkey bars. Watch kids on the monkey bar swinging by one on the bars. How many of us as adults can do that? Not a lot. There's a lot of challenges that are out there that you don't really need a gym to push yourself.
So and I remind folks, if you have a question, just click on the person with their hand up, and we'll be getting to as many of those as we can. There's a question here. It says, with aging and working at a desk for most of the day, what type of tips can you suggest to keep good posture and overall maintenance? Excellent.
Yes, posture is one of those qualities that I never really considered when I first started this career. It was never anything that I really thought about, but now Posture and balance are two of the greatest qualities that people come to me for working with, enhancing. And one of the best exercises or stretches, movements, whatever we want to classify them as, for people who work at desks, one, that piriformis stretch that I demonstrated earlier, this really helps with all of the hips. Your hips, when you're constantly seated, the hip flexors at the front of your body, they kind of start to just wear out a little bit. They don't really get all the attention they need. A minute or two stretching out the piriformis can really help alleviate a lot of lower back issues and hip issues. Now for posture for the upper back, one of my favorite exercises is called the face pull. I love this for its effect, but also it's a very self-explanatory exercise. You simply, if you have a band, which I wish I don't really have a band handy here, but you could do this with a gym, a cable system at a gym or with a band. Essentially, you imagine I have a handle in each hand here. I would tie the band off to a single point, and then I just pull up and try to finish in this double bicep flex pose. So I'm using my upper back muscles to squeeze my shoulder blades together and then pull the band into this upward position. Another great exercise that's for the upper back or for fixing posture is just getting your scapula, the shoulder blades, moving. You can get down on all fours, knees on the ground, hands on the ground, and do what we call a straight arm push-up, where all you really do is just you try to lower your body by squeezing your shoulder blades together, and then you spread your shoulder blades to elevate your torso. So I don't know if you can see here, but my elbows aren't actually moving at all. It's just my shoulder blades gliding together and then spreading apart. And this will really help open up a lot of the stiffness between the shoulder blades and those muscles up there. That's what usually happens, what rounds our back and causes us to get this sort of candy cane posture.
So one thing that, somebody asked if we can share the website, the GMB website. So we'll be sure to do that.
Yeah, I love them, and I talk about them in my articles constantly. So I check them out.
So there's a question here in terms of, it's hard to get going on an exercise routine. I haven't worked out in a while. How do I get myself over the hump?
Right. So that's, that's one of the biggest things trainers do. If you hire a trainer, then you have an appointment set in place. So oftentimes it's that idea of, well, I paid for it, I have the appointment, I have to go. Now, that's not always guaranteed because there are bad trainers. So the best thing to do is don't discount what you already do. Walking is amazing. Walking is one of the most beneficial exercises that people can do. Now, you want to separate or add a distinction between a gentle stroll through the park and then an actual walk. What I want you to do is think like you're almost going to be late for a meeting and you have to walk down the street with focus and intent. Tall posture, shoulders back, like, that superhero sort of posture. Walk down the street, get the arms going, get the legs moving. You might look a little silly. You don't have to go full on power walker, but you want to move with a bit of intent and a bit of focus. And what will you notice? That heart rate is going to get up. And it's not a whole lot different than some of the effort people put into on a treadmill when they're working at like a 1 or 2 or 3 on a treadmill. So walking on a daily basis is one of the most important things. So if you are starting from zero, try to develop a walking habit. 7 days a week, one day, once or twice every day, go for at least a 20-minute walk and just build up from there. And then that will help psychologically make exercise a little less intimidating. It'll help get your cardio up a little bit. And then from there, work into some basic yoga poses. Yoga is fantastic. It's very gentle. It's easy on the joints. It's also really hard. It's this idea, we have this idea that yoga is something anyone can do. I work with people all day long, and very few people can actually do proper downward dogs or touch their toes. So there's a lot of value in basic yoga poses, and you can find yoga exercises, programs anywhere on the internet too.
And we only have a minute left here, but any advice for someone who has strained muscles or ligament recovery? That might be a bigger question, but what would be one or two tips there?
Ligaments, ligament and tendon issue, that could be a hard one to recover from. But this is where I really love body weight exercises. The majority of the programs I prescribe to my clients, and the majority of my own training, is based off body weight. Pull-ups, push-ups, squats, lunges. The nice thing is that there's ways to modify it, that almost any exercise, to suit your actual abilities. And when you move your own body through space, it's something your body is already used to. Most of the ligament and tendon damage that I've heard of comes from people trying to move external objects. They're trying to push weights that are a little too heavy for them. Rarely do you ever hear of anyone injuring themselves doing a push-up. So I would focus a lot on body weight exercises that are within your range of motion, that are within your ability. So if this is, say, a damage right here on the shoulders, push-ups might be really aggressive. But I guarantee you could do an incline push-up where you put your hands on an elevated surface like a table, or even off of a wall where you're almost completely upright. And we work through there. And sometimes it's a very slow battle. Sometimes it can take a while, but starting small is fantastic because it leaves you a ton of road to progress through. So don't ever discount the impact of small steps over a long period of time. You don't have to get everything done right away.
And folks, unfortunately, that's our time for today, so we weren't able to get to all of the questions. I think a key thing, though, that I heard Paul say is the idea about starting small. We heard that even when we heard from Leslie Beck, the nutritionist. We've heard it from a number of the psychologists, that these small things that we do that are healthy and move us in the right direction accumulate to make big benefits. And Paul, I think it's great today. You've made it so accessible for us, and so thank you for joining us. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, no, thank you. And thanks, folks, for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.